Hey guys, it's Sam, and today is my second day back in America after a 2-week trip to Japan during a global pandemic. So that was really cool. Obviously, so unexpected from I think every single person in the world right now. For me, like a few days after I got to Japan is when things actually blew up. And so I'm still having a hard time wrapping my mind around it. Like the world that I left and the world that I came back to feel like alternate realities. They're like night and day difference. It's so weird. But I wanted to make a video about this because on my trip I was getting tons of questions and people that were concerned and praying for me and just curious about what traveling was like, what Japan was like. So yeah, I wanted to answer some of you guys' questions. I will say this isn't like a trip highlight video because that would not be very fun. So definitely stay tuned for some like vlogs and some more fun videos that are coming out. But another reason I wanted to make a video kind of specific to this issue is I know there's still a lot of people with trips planned to Japan this summer, this fall. Actually, for some weird reason, I know like 4 or 5 people with trips planned. So yeah, I just wanted to be able to kind of share my experience with you guys, and I hope that it's helpful. I will say, like, I am not gonna tell you what you should or shouldn't do because I'm not the expert. I'm not a medical professional or a government official. I am not qualified to do that for you guys. So please do listen to the experts, do your research. But yeah, I'm just here to kind of share my story with you guys and what it was like for me. So let's do it. Okay, so a couple of weeks before I left is when things first started coming out about coronavirus in America specifically. I think we were behind on our knowledge. So initially it was really confusing. Like there was a lot of information that was directly contradicting each other. Things were very vague. It was super hard to tell the severity of the situation. I was doing research. I was trying to, cover all the bases still, even with the little information that we did have. And honestly, like everyone I talked to, like professionals in the field, my airlines, like I felt fine about the trip. I really didn't have any anxiety at all until the night before my trip, when the person I was supposed to go with backed out, didn't want to take the risk basically. That was the first moment really for me of like, oh, wow, like, okay, what do I do? Like it was super last minute. Like I basically had 9 hours from when I found out to when I was supposed to leave for the airport. And so, yeah, it was a stressful period of time, but I can't emphasize enough how different the just the vibe was then. The amount of fear and anxiety and things that are out now, it's just in a different world from where it was when I left. So, I had a lot of reasons for why I thought I should still go, and I'm not gonna go into all of those right now because it's just a lot of information and facts that have basically all changed at this point. So yeah, I did feel like, okay, I'm still gonna go. And I will say probably the biggest component of that for me was a lot of you guys know this, but some of you guys don't. My faith is everything in my life, and really kind of from the moment that I decided to go, I just said God, I'm gonna give this to you because I don't really know what to do or if I'm making the right decision. And so I'm just gonna give this situation to you. I'm gonna trust that you're in control. And really from the moment that I did that, I just had this overwhelming peace and rest, and I just felt no fear, no anxiety. And I just knew in that moment that whatever happened, whether I was able to go on the trip or whether I would have to rush home, that I was gonna be okay. And so I decided to go, and I'll just give you a spoiler, like, I'm glad that I did, for sure. So, okay, let's talk about what it was actually like. So when I got to the airport, like, I could tell there was less people there for sure, less people on my flight, but there weren't really that many travel restrictions at that point, like in the world, actually. Some airlines had been taking like preventative measures and canceling flights, but as far as like legal travel bans at the time, the only places that you couldn't go to were like the directly affected areas in China. So yeah, like our flight left with literally no issues and arrived with no issues. When I got to Japan, they were doing temperature screenings through customs. It basically looked like a regular security gate that you walk through. So it's not like anybody was like probing me or anything. But yeah, they took my temperature. They asked if I had been to any of these like specific regions, and that was it. From that point on, like, my trip was very normal. There really wasn't anything that I wanted to do that I couldn't do. Yes, a lot of the bigger attractions are closed in Japan. You guys know this by now. Disney World, Universal Studios, museums. Although it is not true that all schools closed there. It was a recommendation that schools closed. Some did, some didn't. I did see a lot of kids in uniforms still. But for me, like, none of that was really a deal breaker. Like, I don't really care about museums, or I don't go to Japan to go to Disney World, you know? So it didn't super affect my travel plans at all. But it might affect other people's travel plans. So yeah, I think when I first got there, I could tell there was probably less people out. The thing is, like, I was in Tokyo, and there are so many people in Tokyo that even if you cut it down by half, that is still a lot of people. And so even though there was less people out, there was still a lot of people out. And yeah, more people were wearing masks than usual. There were some signs up in certain places, just notices that like, hey, we're trying to prevent this disease from spreading, so here are things that you can do. There were hand sanitizer stations everywhere, which I thought was awesome, and signs encouraging people to use them. I think that some trains were affected, but not in a way of like canceling trains. I think they just scheduled less trains, which again, like in Tokyo, that means instead of a train leaving every 2 minutes, it's leaving every 4 minutes. So not a huge effect for me as a tourist. The longer that I was in Japan, the more I felt like things were kind of going back to normal. Like, I did go to Fukuoka for a couple of days, which was an area that really hadn't been very affected. I think maybe only 3 cases there, at least when I was there. And so you could definitely feel like the vibe was different. Like, people were out, people were living their normal lives. And I think just in general, that's probably the biggest difference between Japan and especially America, is just the air was not an air of fear and anxiety at all. You know, like here, you can really feel people's anxiety when you're talking to them and when you're looking at their posts on social media. And granted, it's warranted. Like, I understand why people are scared and why people are anxious, but it just wasn't that mood in Japan. It wasn't. It really felt like people were going about their daily lives and maybe just doing a little bit less. At the very end of my trip, I was back in Tokyo, and the cherry blossoms started coming out. And so that's when I really felt like things turned, and it was like the Japan that I had experienced last year, and there were tons of people out and things were going on as normal. And I actually did go up into Tokyo Tower, which had previously been closed and reopened. They were still taking precautions. They did take my temperature before I went up, but things were opening up again. So I was seeing all these posts and stuff on social media about how crazy things were, and it was so weird because that wasn't happening for me. You know, I wasn't getting any of that. So it was very surreal. So as far as like when I came home, that was also a lot easier than I anticipated, especially after hearing all the stuff on the news about how crazy airports had been and travel bans and all this stuff that had come out. There still wasn't any travel restrictions between Japan and the United States, at least with my airline, and there still aren't right now as of me filming this video. That could change. Actually, it could definitely change now because the situation has gotten way worse in America. But again, like at the time, like there wasn't really anything out about it. So yeah, my flight home was totally fine, and I had zero issues getting through the airports. In the Japan airport coming home, they did ask me the same questions as when I got there, like, have you been to any of these regions? This time there are more regions added than when I had arrived. They also did another temperature screening and checked my passport like several times, and that was it as far as getting on the plane. When I got off the plane in Chicago, I was actually really surprised because nothing happened. Nobody asked me a single question other than, is there any food in your bag? There are all these machines and customs there, and I have global entry, so you have to put your fingerprints on the machines, and they weren't like cleaning them, they weren't shut down, like everything was just totally normal, and I was out of the airport within 5 minutes. So that was super weird and not what I was expecting, and that probably just made a lot of you really upset. And yeah, it's weird. I think I really got as lucky as I could possibly get with this trip. So my experience was very good, but I don't think that everybody's having that experience. I did meet a girl in Tokyo from Peru who was actually not allowed to go back home because Peru had closed its borders to anybody flying in. So I know that there are other experiences out there that were happening at the same time as me that were worse and that were hard, and I just didn't have that. And I feel like so lucky. I feel almost guilty about it a little bit, but just very blessed. And it was that like peace that God gave me, that he was gonna take care of me, and he did. And so as a result, like I had an amazing trip, and I was able to have the trip without fear and without anxiety, and that's so incredible. So for you guys that are still planning trips and you have things coming up, like obviously the situation has changed a lot. I think if I had to leave tomorrow, I don't even know if I'd be able to at this point, but like it's different now. There's a lot more to consider. And I think the biggest question that really all of us have to ask ourselves right now is like, how can we be there for each other? How can we love each other? How can we be a community? And so maybe taking these risks right now, would that be really loving to each other? I think that's just kind of what you have to ask yourself. But I would also say, just stay on top of things, especially if you have a trip planned in like the fall and there's like months before you're about to go, like just be in tune with what's going on and maybe hold out for as long as you can. I get it. Like I did not want to cancel my trip. I was looking forward to it so much, and I'm sure a lot of other people are feeling that way. So yeah, just make sure you have all the facts and make sure you're loving people well. And I think if you're doing those two things, like you'll be able to come to a decision pretty easily. Obviously the Olympics have been postponed a year, so that might have made the decision for some of you. I think my experience is probably a little anticlimactic because nothing major happened. I really feel like I'm kind of adjusting to a new world here, and I'm doing the 14-day quarantine, but I feel fine, I feel great. And I think I'm probably at a greater risk now where I am than where I was in Japan. And I will say, I think there's a lot of speculation out there about like, well, is Japan really doing testing or not? I don't know. Again, I'm not an expert. I can't speak to that. I think that's probably the case across the world, that we don't really know how widespread this is because You can't test every human on earth. You are totally allowed to disagree with me and my opinions. I don't really feel like I have opinions though. I'm just alive, and I'm thankful that I'm alive and that I made it through the trip and that the trip was awesome. So thank you guys so much for just people that reached out to me and that, you know, were praying for me. I know that played a huge role in my protection for this trip. So I'm very, very thankful, and I wanted to update you guys and just let you know that I had a great time and that I'm doing well, and that's kind of it, you know. I'm just getting adjusted to everything, and I think we're kind of all in that boat. If you have any more questions you think I can answer, feel free to drop those in the comment section and I'll do my best. Otherwise, like, stay tuned for the videos I've got coming up. I'm really excited about sharing my trip with you guys. I took so many pictures, so many videos. It's gonna take me like forever to get through it all, but I have time now. Seriously, thank you guys for praying for me and for caring for me. It was really, really great to know that I have that many friends. I don't know how to end this video, so I'm just gonna end this video and say, let's love each other in this time, guys. Please, let's love each other. Let's be patient with each other, considerate towards each other, and get through this thing together, all right? Cool.